There are other Droges. Some of them go Droege, but apparently, um, sort of Dutch German origin back in the 1850s. Apparently, my name means ditch digger. I've been I collected stamps as a kid, and I got back into it in my mid 30s. And I've collected different things from different times. I used to collect Colombians on cover. I collected exporters on cover and became kind of the world's expert on usages of the Mexico exporter issue. But now I collect kind of I don't really collect it. I just sort of accumulate Africa uh, post colon post independence. So it was 1989, and I noticed there wasn't much technology. I'm a software developer. I was at Duke at the time building information systems. I still do work for Duke, and I'm still a software developer. But anyway, I kind of noticed there wasn't much technology for auction companies, so I approached a few and ended up writing what has become kind of the leading auction management system for stamp auctions. And I've worked for all the players from Siegel down to, the old Michael Rogers and David Phillips. So I've worked with auction companies, stamp auction companies of every size, um, wine auction companies. We wrote the wine system for Sotheby's and Hart Davis Hart, which is the largest wine auction company in the United States, and Sotheby's is the largest in the world. A number of the European auction houses, sports, etc. So I have a long history of writing information systems for auction companies of all kinds in the collectible space. Although we did do a furniture store down in a rare furniture place in New Orleans that was fun. So in 94, the internet started to become important, and I suggested to the 25 auction companies that were on our platform at the time that I could take their catalogs and put them on the internet. And they were very skeptical. But I did it anyway. And so for 3 or 4 years, I was posting their catalogs at Stamp Auction Network basically for free, just to sort of get them the idea that there was a future in this. So we posted sales like the Honolulu Advertiser and the Zollner sale or the Gross sale. All those were name sales that we did back in the day. And then in 2001, we created live internet bidding and all that. So that's my main contribution to technology in philately. And I've done a few other systems since then. I wrote the PF system. I wrote Siegel's Power Search. I wrote a few other things that aren't around. We used to have things called stamp circuits by a sort of independent stamp circuit people, and I wrote a little program for them to keep track of that. So anyway, that's kind of my story. So I'd like to sort of take this time to sort of give you a sampler of technology that's out there, starting with Stamp Auction Network. But I also want to talk about Philately.live, which is an ecosystem for stamps for collecting spaces. We've done stamps, coins, wine, and sports memorabilia. So I'll talk about that. And I also want to talk about, like the latest developments are in the area of AI. So we've formed a roundtable of people that are doing stuff in AI for philately. And the key word there is agentic. And so I can sort of briefly help you understand what that means. Tell me, just curious, usually, you know, auction people are like 30%, 20 to 30% of the stamp collecting world. How about in this room? How many people in this room? You can just raise your hand or wave, do you use auctions to bid in? So we got, yeah, okay, okay. So that's about half and half. Let me just show you a little bit about Stamp Auction Network.
Thomas, did you build this?
Yeah, I built everything here, everything. Yeah, we were the first. to create a live auction bidding platform for stamps back in 2001. It was debuted with one of the Kelleher Confederate States sales. First of all, we've kind of reorganized some of the menuing. So Stamp Auction Network is just stampauctionnetwork.com. We've got a logo at the top, and the menuing, if you hover over anything, it'll give you these drop downs. So that's how you navigate the website. So we've got instructional videos, we've got frequently asked questions, we've got different resources. But the first thing I want to point you to is a white paper that we did. It's under the resources. And so we have some resources at Stamp Auction Network, and one of them is 10 insider tips to bidding and buying at auction. So this is a 10-point document, easy read that helps you um, understand why you might want to bid at auction. So just a little pointer there. Stamp Auction Network was created, back in 94, and what it is a pretty good automated and interactive interface into a typical catalog. Most people have always bid using a stamp auction catalog. And so from day one, we tried to replicate that as much as we could for the internet. So here's a modern stamps sale. I don't even think they make a catalog anymore. I think they send out a few little paper catalogs to people, but so if you enter the catalog by just clicking on a link, you'll see kind of a representation of the auction. And this is where the world has really changed. Back in the day, you didn't have this kind of inline, um, remember back when you had plates. And if you wanted to see a picture of your stamp, you turn to the plate page and there would be lot one. But now everything is inline images, and a lot of times there are many images on a lot. And the world has changed so that the expectation of bidders is that they scan like nearly every page of a collection lot. So you really do have at your fingertips, you know, 100 times what you used to have back before people started putting their catalogs on the internet. But anyway, once you are signed up and you've been approved to bid with an auction company, placing a bid is just as easy as going over to the bid box and putting in a number and hitting the submit button. So there's basic absentee bidding, which is where you send a bid to the auction house before the auction. And then for most auctions, or for many, we have live bidding. So for instance, you could join this auction live and each lot would come up and you would bid on it as it's being hammered live. So there's an interface to do that, and this is what it looks like. This is the end of their last sale. But there's some bells and whistles. So I want to sort of talk about some of the bells and whistles of Stamp Auction Network because what I've shown you is kind of just the basics. There's something that we call unattended live bidding. And we just sent, let me see if it's out there already. One of the things you can do with Stamp Auction Network is look at the newsletters that we send out. So let's see if I sent that out already. Nope, that's not out. Unattended live bidding is the closest thing to sniping. Okay. Sniping, by the way, is not a thing with real legitimate auction houses. Sniping is something that appeared when auction companies started putting, it's an eBay kind of thing. In eBay, your item may have a fixed close date. It's going to close at midnight on June 4th. So what happens on eBay is that To protect the interest in an item, people would submit their bids secretly through another, like auction sniper or something like that. So the bids wouldn't show up on eBay until the very last seconds, like 3 to 4 seconds. And this is called sniping. And the reason people did it is because they didn't want to let the public see that there was interest in an item. They wanted to keep everything on the down low. And so they would bid at the very last second. The platform would submit their bids and then allow the lot to be sold at an increment over the underbidder. Well, the reason this doesn't work in real auctions is that there's no fixed close for a lot. In on the public floor, if you get a bid, they're going to say, okay, we got 550 here. Do I have 575? They're going to keep the lot open as long as there's interest. So what unattended live bidding does is it submits that bid through the Stamp Auction Network portal, but it does not let the auction company know what the max bid is. So there's a whole kind of explanation of what unattended live bidding is, but it does a couple things. It prevents the auction company from seeing that you're interested in a lot. And in some cases, that creates a scenario where the auction company says, I don't have bids on this lot. So they might have wanted to open it at $1,000, and then they say, okay, well, I don't have any bids on it. I don't want to do it unsold. And we already have met the consignor's reserves on the rest of his lot, so we'll open it at 800. Now, if you had given that bid as an absentee bid, the auctioneer would be making a different determination in his head. So one thing, it keeps a bid secret from the auctioneer. He doesn't know he's got something on the book. The other thing it does is it does not reveal your maximum. So suppose you're willing to bid $1,400 for that lot. The lot doesn't have an opening. He opens it at 800. Your bid goes in at 800. Now someone else might bid an 850, but your bid will immediately come back and top that bid. And it'll keep going that way without letting the auctioneer know what your top bid is. And the thing that that also does is it secures you the tie bid. So auction theory, read that 10 insider tips to bidding at stamp auctions. It kind of explains all this, but there are some significant benefits to kind of agent bidding at Stamp Auction Network.
Is that the same as just putting in a max bid? Because often you have a line you can put, a bid and then a max bid.
Yes, there's a big difference. Absentee bids go to the auction house before the sale. Unattended live bids are held back until the auction happens. So there's an absolutely big difference. If you put a max bid in on a lot and send it to the auction company, which is the way most bids go at Stamp Auction Network, then they see that max bid. It's on the book. They know they've got some interest in it. They might start it at a couple increments underneath your max bid or something like that, but they're going to bid up to your max and they're going to know what it is. So it is a big difference. Now, bear in mind that, absentee bids are bids that are given to the auction house before the sale. We also do live bidding, and that's a third thing, and that's where most of the action happens. Most lots get sold to the floor. Generally, only about 20% of bids are strong enough as absentee bids to win the lot. But that creates another scenario where there is a reason to submit an absentee bid, and that is if you know what the item is worth, that's all you want to pay, and you don't think people are going to pay more, and you want to secure the tie bid. So if you know that a lot is really only worth $200, but you want to secure that bid at $200, then place it as an absentee bid. You lose some of the upside because it might have started lower, but there are cases where um, in certain ways, placing a absentee bid is makes sense. But that's all diving deep into auction theory, and that paper kind of helps you understand that.
You were saying that it doesn't have a fixed end. Um, like, is there an algorithm where it just says, okay, there's no more, it's reached some threshold of no more interest, will close now?
No, because a live auction is actually run by a person. So, if you join the Kelleher sale or the Modern Stamps or any of these live auctions, there is an audio feed. And every lot, they start with lot one and they open it up and they sell it. And you hear someone talking, and there's a floor, there's people calling in on the phone. So it's managed by an auctioneer, a true auctioneer. It is a true auction with an internet interface to it. It's not like eBay, or it's not like, anything else. This is a true real-time professional North by Northwest kind of Sotheby's. There's a guy up there with a hammer kind of thing.
There's a tremendous quantity of data on past closed lots, which is good for research too.
So that's the second conversation, is extended features. So we have something called extended features, which opens up the database at Stamp Auction Network to, your basic bidder. It's under research tools, and I'll kind of explain them. But first, I just want to sort of say what this covers. So we've been collecting data since 2001, and we went back prior to that and have gotten previous data from all these auction houses. So at Stamp Auction Network right now, there are 4.7 million lots, historic lots that were sold at Stamp Auction Network going all the way back to, I think, 1996 or prior. We have all the rarity sales going all the way back to when they were black and white slides. And that represents $3.3 billion worth of stamps. And, so Siegel's, we got 431 sales from Siegel, 250,000 lots of Siegels, or half a million, no, $500 million worth of lots. So this is what's available to you through Stamp Auction Network. So if you go to I'll just show you where it comes into play. The Skylar Rumsey sale is just been posted, and I haven't looked at this yet, so we're going to discover this together. But let's go look at this lot. One of the things these research tools help you do is identify the real highlights of the sale. So I'm going to use this tool to identify some of the real highlights, and I'll show you what I mean by highlight. This is a lot coming up in this Rumsey sale, and this is all automated. It's all a benefit of like having a database. This lot is maybe the best stamp in their sale by a measure of its ranking in its census. And you might not have even thought about this lot. It's really like a $500 stamp. So what's the big deal? Well, there are 1,000 number 7 used in the world in our database. So we got a world of about 1,000 used number 7s. Now, this particular one is ranked number 7 out of 1,000 stamps. So no one's ever thought about, we keep the provenance of the different inverted jennies, but who cares about this stamp? I mean, you couldn't really, no one creates a census for number 7 used, but we can do it. So when you're going to think about what you should bid on this lot, I can tell you where this stamp sold for in 3 previous sales. It sold at Harmer Shaw back in 2018. Before that, it was at Siegel in 2010. And before that, it was also at Siegel at 2007. And look at the price range. I mean, back in 2007, it sold for $3,000. It sold for 500. It sold for 776 most recently. So at one time, this was quite a quite a stamp. And that's why it's sitting here at in seventh place, because it's at some time in its history it sold for $3,000. Now this one is has never been sold at Stamp Auction Network before that we know, but it's currently being offered at for $4,000, and for a used 8A, that's a pretty hefty price, but it is because it looks pretty good. And if we wanted to see how this compares to the other 8As, I would just go over to the census tool and I can see the other ones. So here's this one. Now, actually, that looks like the same one. Let me see. Yeah. Yeah, that is it. That's it. That's it. Um, but that's saying Spink, New York. So yeah, Rumsey is selling the same stamp that sold at Spink, New York. It just hasn't connected it up yet. But that's this stamp. I'll take a look. And so here we have, here's this the same stamp again. And then we can see what's in second place, what's in third place, what's in fourth place. So you can definitely see why this stamp is regarded so highly because of its margins. And that's all at your fingertips. I mean, you didn't need to go pull open a bunch of auction catalogs and figure that out.
When you say a stamp is offered at, do you mean that's the reserve price and it will go for nothing less?
It's what it's currently being selling for. So it can mean some different things. Prior to the auction, it can mean that that's what it's selling for now, and that selling price may be a reserve, or it may be some submitted absentee bids, but it is the current selling price.
Well, if you say selling price, does that mean if you offer it, you'll get it right away?
No, no, this is not a buy it now. This is an auction. So so what it means is that prior to the sale, this lot will go up for auction on April 23rd. It's not for sale now. You can't just buy it. It will be put on the auction block on April 23rd. So if you're interested in this lot, you need to be prepared to bid either live, place an absentee bid, or place an agent bid. But right now, based on either the reserve or the the pre-bid absentee bids, it's currently being offered for $600 plus the buyer's premium. So you at least have to pay that much at this point. Now it may be much more when it comes to the floor at auction, but that's why this information is helpful because look, this lot in 2022, this lot sold for $1,900 plus the buyer's premium. This same stamp. I'm not talking about one like it. I'm talking about this exact one. And you can tell by the image that this is the same stamp. So this stamp sold at Rumsey's sale for 1900 back in 2022. So 4 years ago. And then 6 years before that, it sold for 1,000. And then back in 2010, it sold for 350. So this is an interesting stamp in the sense that it's trending up.
It might be helpful to explain like each auction company sets their own opening bid. And usually the opening bid is the bid that it will open at. It doesn't necessarily represent a reserve. Sometimes it does.
Right.
And
Yep, exactly. That's
sometimes
correct.
if there's no pre-bids and no interest in the floor at the opening price, they may offer several increments below to generate interest. So
Exactly.
usually they offer it at their suggested opening bid, but there are some minority cases where it can actually sell for something under that because they decide, okay, they set a open at 1,000, but they have no bids on the books at 1,000. Nobody in the room is making any move at 1,000. So they say 800 and they get somebody, either
Right.
online or on the floor who'll say 800 and then no increments ahead of that. So then they hammer it down for 800.
And that's exactly correct, Jennifer, except to add one more element to what you're saying. There is a lot of pre-auction action on lots. There is a lot.
Yeah, so
They
that's an
may not
unusual
win.
case where it would go below the.
Well, yeah, what you're saying about the below is correct, but what I'm saying that in a good auction with good material, there will be a strong book. What that means is that there's a lot of bids that are placed before the live auction that move the price up from its starting bid to a opening bid. It is a competitive bid situation, and you have real bids on the book before the auction starts that have moved the price up from where the auctioneer started the lot. And a lot of auctioneers will start the lot at much lower than they think it will get, just so they get people interested. To answer your question, Roger, if you see offered at after the auction, then your supposition is correct. It means that that's probably a stamp that did not sell because it did not meet his reserve, and that tells you where it started. But prior to the auction, you don't know that. You can't tell that. Offered means it's currently being offered at this price, and this is the real-time opening bid on that lot. As we leave this conversation, I do want to say, that there's a lot of tools to help you with bidding, and you shouldn't be afraid of bidding at auction. And the reason why people bid at auction is because it is essentially the wholesale market for stamps. Um, it is a place where when you're bidding against either another collector who is paying what a collector valuation for a stamp, or you're bidding it against a dealer who plans to sell that to someone in his, you know, email list. Um, so there's some trepidation of getting involved in the auction business. And I know a lot of people prefer to just say, okay, that's $1,000 stamp. I just want it for $1,000. But you can save money by bidding at live auction because you're competing against other collectors. You're not buying it at a dealer marked up price. And it doesn't matter what you're bidding on it. It's good for like rare items like we're looking at here, but it's also great for collection lots and smaller priced items and getting good deals. So right now we're at a real age of opportunity. And if you go look at like, for instance, Kelleher's collection lot sale, which is coming up, there's a whole conversation about the future of philately, from dire straits to it's okay to it's going well. Um, I think it's I think there's plenty of new collectors coming in. I think the main place where we're seeing stuff happen is in the 40 to 65-year-old. The new retirees are getting into stamps. I see a lot of people. Stamp Auction Network is growing. Every day we have 5 new bidders at Stamp Auction Network. APS talks about dying and their membership down. Our membership constantly increases. So we have a very positive view of what's going on with philately. But one of the opportunities is a fact that a lot of dealers, um, collectors are selling their collection. The 80-year-olds are buying the 90-year-olds' stamp collections. That's the most dire way of looking at it. But the fact of the matter is, there's a lot of material, collections, dealer lots. So now, like never before, you have opportunities in collection lots to buy amazing collections at prices that we haven't seen ever. Let's move away from Stamp Auction Network. Back in the early days of the internet, there was a guy named Joe Luff. He was a stamp dealer, and he compiled a list of stamp auction entities on the internet, and it was called Joe Luff's Philatelic Resources. And it was one of the key internet resources back when, there were only a couple hundred stamp collecting websites. And so he kept this list going for many years. It finally died. It's not available anymore. I think you can find it in the Blast from the Past or whatever that internet. There's an internet tool that lets you look up old websites. Um, but philately.live is a AI generated um, Google for philately. It's kind of new. We kicked it off in 2023, and what it is and I'm going to log in, but it's essentially it's a resource that contains all of the websites in philately, whether they're auction companies, dealers, societies. You guys are in here. So there you are. You're at philately.live. You didn't know that, but here you are. It's kind of a Google for philately. And there are reasons why we need a Google for philately. I don't know if you've noticed that Google is changing the way they answer questions. So here's your club at philately.live. This was originally scraped, and then this content was created by an, an AI agent. But then someone in your organization came in and edited it. And that's the beauty of philately.live is that it's created by software tools, but at any time you can go claim your own content and take it over. What we do as a way of promoting philately.live is I don't know if you've seen our newsletters where we have the philately.live videos of the week. And so what we've been doing is going and grabbing your content and connecting it to your page. So you can come and look at, I don't know that we have all of them, but I remember this one, this was great, your story, your feature on John Sperati. And so this is very helpful for a collector. Like if I collect Mexico, I can just type in Mexico and hit enter, and it will tell me, let's see all results. Everybody in the philatelic universe that has something to do with Mexico. And here's some dealer. It's a dealer. This is my database of exporter covers. So you can get dealers. MEPSI will be in here, different societies, different videos. There's something from MEPSI. Um, eBay, there's an eBay dealer on it. The auction companies like Rumsey does a lot of Mexico. It's just a really handy resource to have a curated Google for philately. I welcome you to sign up at philately.live, go there and wander around. We have events, there's a message board. It is a little bit of a social network for philately. That's philately.live. Now, what it is actually, it's an ecosystem map, which is kind of a new technology. I don't know if anyone's ever heard the term marketplace, but in the world of technology, a marketplace is a online buyer seller kind of meetup. So Amazon is the granddaddy of marketplace. eBay is a marketplace. Stamp Auction Network is a marketplace. The ecosystem maps take the marketplace and expand it even further. So an ecosystem map is an online mapping of the entire segment of that area, not just, say, the auctions or what's for sale. Ecosystem maps are used in entrepreneurship to map, you know, investors, funders, entrepreneurs, service providers. I mean, that's kind of part of where it came out. But even like ecosystems are used in industry. Like if you're a big pharma, you're going to likely create an ecosystem map of every product that you have. And that ecosystem map would be all the researchers in that area, all the big pharma, et cetera. So you world is so big that you need these maps to help you navigate them. So this is a powered by EcoMap Technologies, which is a company in Baltimore that builds eco maps for all different kinds of eco maps. So this is a software product that I license to create this. The idea is that collectors have something, have a commonality around them that extends and benefits all of the collecting spaces. So this is one of our, we call it contributions to the future of philately. Let's link all these collecting ecosystems, and that's what we've done. We've built these ecosystems and create some synergy and some cross-pollination.
I collect stamps and then I collect stuff of other categories too. And the thing is, an item in your collection physically can exist only in one physical space, but it can interrelate with other items in your collection. So my dream would be to like have a complete catalog of all my collectibles that's not just on a spreadsheet, but it'll show how the different items interrelate. And you can't really do that by the way you physically position them in your possession, like in an album or on a shelf. But then the database would show how the items interrelate and then thematic and historical connections between them, or artistic and stylistic connections.
Like build different networks.
Actually, the latest thing that we've been involved in technology is the question of artificial intelligence and not just what's going on with ChatGPT. And, you know, we've all heard about AI from ChatGPT to Claude to Grok, et cetera. And we've been tracking with this for a good 3 years now. In fact, Philately.live is actually the first philatelic AI application in Philately, and I can explain why that is. When ChatGPT first came out in Philately, it was just kind of funny because everyone was playing with it, and the consensus was it is a total bunch of crap. It's like it doesn't do anything. It creates fictitious answers. They're called hallucinations. It's totally wrong about everything. Well, it didn't take very long for that to completely turn around 180 degrees. And today, if you just go to ChatGPT or go to the Anthropic product Claude or Grok and ask them a philatelic question, it is unbelievably amazing how these tools have progressed in just a short period of time. AI is here to stay. It's going to affect, it is going to affect nearly everything in our lives. And I can tell you this for a fact because one of the other hats I wear is that I run a venture capital fund. I live in the world of entrepreneurs and funding entrepreneurs and investing in startups. I live in North Carolina in the Research Triangle. I've been doing this since, I raised capital as a founder back in 85 myself. So I've been in this world of technology, startups, et cetera. And what's happening right now in AI, there's two things happening, and they both have different impacts. The lesser known one is going to have a greater impact. The one we all hear about is like ChatGPT is doing this, and Anthropic you know, take the didn't take the defense contract, and he's wearing a white hat, and we're all glad for that. And you know, AI is going to take away all our jobs, and um, but when we're having those conversations, we're talking about interfacing with ChatGPT in kind of a chat mode. You ask it questions, it talks back to you. That is a interactive experience with an AI. Now, there's a whole nother thing going on the side. And a lot of people don't really know what's going on. And this is where you see what investors are doing, because investors are investing in ChatGPT and all that, but they're also investing in agentic applications. Now, an agentic application is an entirely different thing. What an agentic application is is a tool or a decision-making product or a workflow product that has built into it AI. So an agentic application is designed to do a certain thing.
Can you just define the word agentic?
Instead of having an interface with a large language model and getting answers from prompts, you're building it has to do with building a decision-making tool. So an agentic application, instead of just answering questions on the fly, it has a predetermined kind of workflow, or it's designed to answer questions and produce results. And it's designed specifically around a application or need. Just go to resources, and that has a link to the to this primer. So travel agents were kind of displaced by Expedia, but Expedia can't do what AI does. I mean, has anyone planned a trip with ChatGPT lately? It's amazing. I mean, sat down with ChatGPT. I said, my wife and I would like to go to Alaska, Los Cabos, and maybe and Greece. And so it found us this amazing place in one of the islands in Greece. But it interacts with you, ask questions, you plan it. It can plan an itinerary. It can write an email to the travel agent or write an email to the hotel. It's just amazing. Now, that's you sitting down with a computer, talking to it back and forth, asking it questions. And AI is only good as you can ask a good question and you can understand its answer. But what an agentic application would do is take that all and put a wrapper around it and actually do all the asking the questions and build it all out for you. So in philately, what we're seeing are things like expertization products. Now you can scan your stamp and load it up to ChatGPT and say, what is this? Or is it real? And it's going to give you kind of an amazing, considering what it's doing, answer. But right now in philately, people are developing like replacements for the philatelic foundation, where it actually will do even more than scan the stamp and identify it for you. Uh, doing the centering and grading it is actually a trivial issue. The more complicated things are like, what kind of paper is it? What kind of ink is? So you're going to see artificial intelligence tools combined with like some of this equipment that would like actually read the paper and get um, you know, I'm a physicist from way back, but I don't remember the term. But it shines the light on it and it measures the light beams that come off, and it can tell you what the paper is actually made of. So you put those inputs into something like this, and you truly can have uh, a workflow that will potentially replace something like the Philatelic Foundation. And what's interesting is that the Philatelic Foundation sees this coming and they're not against it. There's people in the foundation that see this as a benefit. All that to say is that we've put together a roundtable of people that are doing this stuff already. These aren't just people talking about how stupid ChatGPT is. These are people that have discovered that it's very useful and are building tools around it. And so we have a twice a month. We're on our third meeting this Tuesday. So we have a twice a month meeting on agentic AI for philately. And we've got a group of, I think, 80 people on our email list now. And anyone in this group is welcome to sign up and come, join in and listen. You don't have to be someone that is building AI applications, but if you just want to know what's going on, um, that would be you would be welcome. It's a little bit of a learning curve, but it's not that big of a learning curve. And you do need to learn a kind of a new technology, new set of vocabulary for this space. But it's a learning curve, but it's not a giant learning curve. And what's interesting is that the technology has already evolved to a point where putting these things together is only a moderate level. It's not trivial. It's not overly complicated. You can throw these things together without being a programmer. And I know people that are doing that. It's a new world, but
Every
Yeah,
day.
who knew when you started that you would be able to, ultimately do what you're
yeah,
hoping to do
I
with
didn't,
all
this was
this
not in my
auction
plan.
data?
Yeah, I totally fell into this. I was a happy programmer at Duke writing healthcare systems. I still do that.
These large language models work by scanning tremendous quantities of text, uh, most of it from the internet. Uh, there's a lot of bullshit on the internet.
Right.
Why don't we get that back from the AIs, or do we get it back from the AIs?
A large language model is, think of it as a translator. It's a language translator. So it takes content, converts it into numbers so it can be stored. It then goes to those numbers and collects information in the numbers and then spits it out in words. And it uses a predictive statistical method to do this. So what a LLM is doing it's not really intelligent in the idea of what intelligence means. Although I think our definitions of what intelligence is are going to change because we're going to find out, like, if you look back at the evolutionary story, like a lot of intelligence was like machine learning, except our brain was doing the machine learning. And I think the idea of what intelligence is going to evolve to be something different based on our experience with AI. But all that to say, um, ChatGPT just goes out to this ginormous database. Now, to reduce the hallucinations or to eliminate them, because hallucinations have largely been eliminated. It's very hard. You can create a question with ChatGPT that will create some fictitious information. And if you give it a 500-word essay and you say, turn this into 2,000 words, it's going to create some fake stuff. So you can purposely make up silliness by using AI. But in general, that is a thing of the past. But the way you hammer that down, and this is what we need to do in philately, is you create your own vector database and you make sure that the only thing that goes in there is the curated information. And again, we already did this. And when we released Philately.live in 2023, we had the first philatelic chatbot that was using a large language model to answer questions. And the questions were being answered from a combination of ChatGPT data and our own internal database. And we can train the Philately.live database. We can upload the Brookman book. We can upload, Lynn's stamp book of US stamps. We can upload any PDF. We can upload exhibits. We can training, you hear the term training an AI. Training an AI is mostly loading data into it. It's not like teaching it how to think or like blah, 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 blah. These large language models are sophisticated enough that you just need to feed it curated data. And that's how you eliminate, that's how you create a database that you can interact with a LLM and get good information.
But
And
what is ChatGPT curated?
no, no. So that's what I'm saying. We need to build our own. And that's what this group is doing. And there are people already working on this, building a true data repository for the entire philatelic community. So that would be the databases like Stamp Auction Network. It would be exhibits that people want to contribute, news articles from every society, you know, books from the Philatelic Library, and the guy on the Philatelic Library is in our group. So you take all these different data, websites, you put the data in a data repository, and you link to it using a LLM. And so then you would have a curated um, AI for philately. You'll hear this word RAG. What makes data connect to a large language model is storing that data with a RAG as a RAG database, which I'm just going to use those words. But oddly, what RAG means, and again, it's kind of you got to wrap your head around this. It's retrieval augmented generation. It's for retrieving, it's adding to, and generating content. Now, it's precisely Phil's question that this interacts with, because when you RAG was originally developed so that you would go to ChatGPT, ask it a general question, and it would go to the RAG database and augment it with other specific information. So you might connect a philatelic database to ChatGPT, and that's where you have this idea. Well, like I get some information from ChatGPT, I then go over to my RAG database and I augment it, and then I give the answer back to you. Now, but what we're realizing now is you don't do the go to ChatGPT in the first place. You just go to your RAG database primarily, and you just create a good RAG database with curated data, and then you use your LLM to talk to it. And then that's how you solve all the problems. And it's all technology that's rapidly available, that doesn't require that we burn down the forests and build data centers and fuel them with hydrocarbons. Because I think the reality is, in my mind, that a large part of AI, we're going to find out, is unsustainable. You would think that technology always advances like Moore's law did for the last 40 years. Moore's law is the idea that integrated circuits, every 2 or 3 years, they get twice as fast and cost half as much. That's Moore's law. So Intel every year makes faster microprocessors and they cost less. And we've been living with that experience for 40 years now. But we are approaching the end of Moore's law. It's not so easy anymore to make your integrated circuit a tenth as big and half as expensive. We're getting down to atoms and stuff like that. And people kind of assume, because we've seen the rapid growth of AI, that we're going to see the same thing. But the difference between AI is that to get 2 or 3 times better AI, you have to spend 10 times as much energy. So big difference. And we're kind of in, I think, the golden age where we have created an amazing amount of technology improvement, and we can do really amazing things. And they don't cost our world that much in terms of energy. But to get to the next level, and then the level after that, well, then the energy requirements to do that are the challenge. Now, I don't know if they'll solve them. If we get fusion going, then we won't have to worry about it. But the challenges to AI are energy.